since the Rivers State Government began the legal battle to take over value-added tax collection from the Federal Inland Revenue Services, FIRS. More and more states have expressed their readiness to do likewise. The latest entrant in the arena is the Oyo State Government, which on Wednesday filed an application before the Court of Appeal in Abuja to be joined in the suit between the FIRS and the Rivers and Lagos State governments. All these are coinciding with a lawsuit filed at the Supreme Court by the 36 states of the Federation against the federal government over failure by the latter to remit funds generated from stamp duties into state accounts. The states are contending that they are legally vested with the authority to administer and collect stamp duties on all transactions involving individuals and persons within their territories and not the federal government. Now, joining us to help us unbundle all the issues relating to the clamor for VAT and stamp duties collections by the states is Ede Dafinone, a chartered accountant and tax consultant. Ede Dafinone is a director at Nixon Bank, council member, Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales, and deputy managing partner at Crow Dafinone Chartered Accountants in Lagos. He comes from the illustrious Dafinone family, which was recognized by the Guinness Book of Records as the family with the highest number of chartered accountants in the world, perhaps. His father, the late Senator David Dafinone, was also a chartered accountant and a senator in the Second Republic. Ede, like his father, is a politician, and he once contested for the Delta Central senatorial seat on the platform of the Democratic People's Party. He's currently a member of the ruling All Progressives Congress and may throw his heart into the ring to contest the next governorship election in his state. Good morning, Ede Dafinone, and welcome to the morning show. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Dr. Batty.
Good morning. Thank you for honoring our invitation. Quickly, we'd just like to have your take on those two contentious issues, the value-added tax and also stamp duties collection. Very important issues, considering the challenge that the states and the federal government both have with regard to revenue collection and revenue and tax management.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to be on your program this morning. I'd like to start by saying on the VAT issue that I'm a believer in equity and fairness. And to me, the VAT law initially established was set up in order for the states to earn revenue based on this consumption tax. And so there is a need for a better sharing formula, so as the states where the consumption occurs can actually benefit more from this tax. My take, however, is that for all individual states to set up their own personal VAT regimes may make it completely unworkable. What they would now push for is what is more like a sales tax. The VAT is to be paid normally by the final consumer of the goods. And that means that the input VAT is given back to the final seller, and he pays over to the state government the final, or federal government, the final output VAT. And it is the difference that is then suffered by the final seller. But where there are individual VAT regimes in different territories, it means that goods sold in Oyo State into Lagos State would suffer different charges at different rates, and there would be a whole new system of reimbursement required. So typically, you would find around the world that VAT is unique to a federal territory and not regional or state territories. So it might not be workable for states to have their own VAT laws. But I hope that this new clamor will take everybody back to the negotiating table and give the states a fairer share of their VAT.
Okay.
Thank
Justice, equity, but there are some conversations on ground. Explain to us this input and output modality for taxation for VAT at first.
Okay, so when a company or factory buys in raw materials, the VAT that is placed on those raw materials is what they would describe as their input VAT. That is the VAT on their inputs. When the company now, and that VAT is paid on by the seller of those raw materials. When that company now sells on the products it has produced, it charges the buyer an output VAT. And it is the difference between the output and the input that is then passed on to the collecting authority. That is the VAT or consumption tax is based on the value added. So that value added in VAT is what is being taxed. The difference between the output and the input.
Well, two issues. The Federal Inland Revenue Service, when all of this started, after that ruling by the High Court in Port Harcourt, wrote a letter to the National Assembly requesting that the Constitution should be amended under item 58 of the exclusive list to make a collection of VAT an exclusive function of the federal government. And second, that there should be a federal revenue court, which will also strengthen, the position of the FIRS. And now you have painted a scenario which is almost on all fours with the position taken by the Northern Governors Forum, that Southern governors are talking about 6 stars and it's not workable to have everybody setting up their own agency. What should be the alternative in this regard? And what do you think of that proposal to the National Assembly by the Federal Inland Revenue Service?
Okay, I started off by saying that I believe in equity, and I rounded up by saying that I hope that this takes everybody back to a negotiating table to give states where the consumption occurs a larger benefit from the tax that is collected within their regimes. Now, in my view, it will be a very difficult regime to set up where states are collecting VAT individually. But that does not make it illegal. That does not make it wrong. So it is the process and modalities for setting up the system that would be difficult. But at today's date, it appears that the Constitution completely backs the Southern governors in their approach to collect VAT in their territories.
So I also want to go back to this argument by some of the Northern governors that collection of VAT by the states will interrupt interstate trade. Make sense of it for me. How does that even happen in the first place? Is that argument valid?
I think the point they're leading to is the difficulties in collecting VAT across territories. So where the input VAT is raised in one territory and the output VAT in another, it means that the netting off of input and output is not happening with one collecting agency, but 2 collecting agencies in different tax territories, which would mean difficult to reconcile, and it is not it is not something that has been tried or tested across regions, either in the European Union or elsewhere, to my knowledge. So in order for the input VAT to be offset against the output, there would have to be quite an intense collaboration for the setting off to happen, which is not impossible, but it would be difficult and cumbersome to manage, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, let's go beyond the VAT and issues of equity. Nigeria will be celebrating 61 years of independence tomorrow. One of the major problems we have had here is sharing formula. You refer to sharing formula, making sure that the states get, a better share of VAT proceeds. There's also argument over federal revenue allocation. And taxation has been a problem. The people do not trust the government. The people do not think that we have an effective tax administration in the country. And yet, everybody is talking about ensuring tax compliance and making tax management more effective. What do you think is the problem? And what do we need to do going forward to make sure that this revenue challenge that we have with taxation and the trust deficit that we have, can be addressed once and for all?
Well, I have to say that over the years, the government has been more and more transparent in the way tax is collected and the way revenue is shared. If you go back 20, 30 years, it was a black box, completely shrouded in mystery. Nobody knew how much was allocated to states from the federation account. And today that is being published in newspapers for everybody to be aware. The Freedom of Information Act also gives better access to such data. And the public do take advantage of these new laws and this new information to better understand the way government works. But having said that, there's still need for greater transparency. That greater transparency gives Nigerians a better understanding of where their money goes and how it is spent. And that brings about greater trust. We're on the right road. Maybe we still need to move a little faster. But that transparency will get us to the promised land. On the sharing formula, it's a difficult one. It requires give and take from all sides, states, federal government, local governments, to agree to change the constitution. I don't have a simple answer to that. I do believe, however, that every state must try and generate its own internal revenue in order to sustain itself. States should not look to being carried indefinitely. So all state governments have a responsibility to build their own economies, to have either agricultural programs or industrialization programs, so as the citizens of the state can enjoy a greater economy, have better development, which of course will lead to better educational facilities, health facilities, and other infrastructure.
Okay, we'll go on a quick break. We'll come back and we'll talk more about this. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to the Morning Show right on the Rise News channel. We have Eddie Omeya, Dafinone, chartered accountant and tax consultant. Let's go straight to it now. I wanted to bring you back to the tax issue. There is a case of multiple taxation on ground. So this is another argument. A lot of people are saying that Lagos, for instance, still collects a consumption tax of about 5% on every transaction, coupled with the VAT. And let's look at countries and climes that run sort of a model like that. Canada, for instance, runs a 5% federal sales tax, coupled with the provincial 8 or 10% tax on it. What do you say about that argument?
But the tax levied in different regions acts as an incentive or disincentive for businesses to migrate to those regions. So what you should see, and I think it does happen already, is where the tax regime in Lagos is seen as being too severe, you will see businesses migrating across to Oyo State and further afield, looking for more favorable tax conditions, more favorable infrastructure costs, etc. So it is up to states or regions to make their environment more attractive for investment. And one of the ways that is done is to provide better services. Now, for Lagos State, the argument may be that they are providing top-class services. They are proximity to the nation's ports gives cheaper access for export or for import, and so they feel that they can levy this extra taxes on companies, and the companies will feel it is worthwhile. It is cheaper to pay that than to move to Oyo State or further afield. But clearly the time comes where states will compete for direct foreign investment, and tax, whether sales tax, VAT, infrastructure, will be what they use to attract or disincentivize companies from investing in their regions.
Well, I wanted to ask you about stamp duties, because that was, also part of the controversy, but lesser attention has been paid to it. The argument you made for VAT, are you making the same argument for stamp duties with regard to the position of the state governors that they should be the ones to collect and manage stamp duties, contrary to what the Stamp Duties Act says with regard to the responsibility of the FIRS?
Dr. Batty, I have to confess I'm not fully up to speed on the stamp duties issue, and I wouldn't want to comment because I'm not familiar with it, and I'd be feeling my way in the dark there. So I'd give that a miss, if I may. Okay.
I mean, I understand that you are also actively involved in politics, and that you may be running next time around for the position of governor in your state. Now, there's this big concern about what governors do with taxes that they collect. You earlier mentioned the point that, yes, state governments should do something about IGR. What kind of guarantees do you think we need to put in place? Because some Nigerians may not agree that tax administration in Nigeria has been transparent. The average Nigerian thinks that, in fact, it's one of the reasons why people want to become governor, so that they can have access to IGR and other, resources of the state. What's your take on that?
Thank you. Thank you again. I have to say that 2023 is a long way away. I'm an active member of the All Progressives Congress in Delta State and nationally, but as far as contesting for the governorship position at Delta State, it's much too early. I am involved in my state politics, but I'm yet to have any clear intention as to what I will do come 2023. For IGR, I think, as I said earlier, it's important for every state to be economically viable on its own. So the thinking of every state governor should be to grow the pie. where a governor comes on seat and he is divvying up the existing pie, it doesn't create development and it doesn't create growth. The governors should, and most of them do, have the intention to grow the pie, to grow their state economies, to be able to bring some prosperity to their people. Now, for the state revenues to be more transparently known, just the same way the federal government is disclosing the sharing of the federation account to states, that awareness needs to be passed down to the state level also to create a greater knowledge, a greater transparency and awareness. It builds trust, and it also builds a tax-paying community where the community are more likely to contribute a percentage of their earnings to the government because they can see where the money is going and what it's being used to do.
All right. So let's talk about tax to GDP ratio in general. The average threshold across Africa is 15%. OECD countries, they do about 33 to 35%. Some will do 40%. The Nordic countries, Scandinavia, Sweden, and the likes, inch it up to 50 to 60%. But Nigeria does a paltry 7%. We cannot grow as a country if we don't at least do the average of 15%. That's the African threshold, and probably push it up to 20% at some point. But we're doing 7% currently, despite so many initiatives, voluntary declaration and many other initiatives. How can we break this tax debacle in Nigeria?
I think, again, I'll take you back 20, 25 years. I think it was under the regime of Dr. Naeju. He was chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue about that time, where the tax-paying community was encouraged to register for tax. What they did was to lower the tax rates so as it would seem less penal for companies to evade tax. They also created a minimum tax base so companies that tried to avoid paying tax could not evade it completely. And what they found was that a lot more companies came out to register for tax. Now, if you roll on 20, 30 years later, because of the internet, because of the way information is more freely available to so many more people, the way companies can register and the way they can be monitored is so much easier for the tax authorities. So we have now several layers of identification. We have from BVN numbers to national identity card numbers to passport, and the others are normal. But with those layers of identification, it becomes harder and harder for both companies and individuals to avoid paying tax. You can no longer be invisible. So the woman in Okiari Market selling soft drinks or alcohol is no longer invisible. She can be tracked, she can be identified, and her revenue can be found. And the tax authorities, both at the federal level and state level, have gone to extreme lengths to be able to track purchases from one level to another and identifying taxpayers as they go along. What it means is that more and more people will realize that they are no longer hidden and they must pay some taxes in order for their community, their environment, their country to be developed.
Well, thank you very much, Dafinone, for joining us on the morning show. Thank you very much indeed.